My boss took credit for my work and fired me in front of everyone. The room was still clapping when my boss took credit for my work. I stood near the wall, 46 years old, hands folded, watching my future get stolen in real time. He smiled at the board and said, "As you can see, my new strategy will raise profits by 30%. My strategy. My late nights. My ideas pulled from my head and worn like a suit that fit him better than it ever would me. I felt heat rush to my face, then cold. The board nodded. Pen scratched. Someone said, "Brilliant." I waited for my name. It never came. Then he turned, casual as if ordering coffee, and said, "We won't be needing your position anymore." Laughter rippled, unsure but real. My chest tightened. I had built this plan after my divorce, after raising 2 kids alone, after proving I still mattered. And in one sentence, he erased me. If you want more true revenge stories, hit subscribe now, because this was only the beginning of mine. I didn't move at first. I kept staring at the screen where my words still glowed in neat boxes. Charts I had rewritten a dozen times. Forecasts I had triple-checked while my daughter slept in the next room. He hadn't changed a thing. Not a color. Not a number. Still, my name was gone like it had never been there at all. Someone cleared their throat. Another person avoided my eyes. I felt myself shrinking, the way I had promised I never would again after my marriage ended. I remembered when my boss first asked for help on the project. How he praised my experience. How he said he trusted me. At my age, trust felt like a compliment. Now it felt like a trick. The applause faded. Chairs scraped. People stood and congratulated him. No one congratulated me. I gathered my notebook, hands shaking, and realized the shock wasn't just that he stole my work. It was that he thought I would accept it quietly. The applause hurt more than the firing. It was loud and full and wrong. People I had trained clapped for him. People I had covered for nodded with approval. I felt invisible, like furniture pushed into the corner. He shook hands, laughed, slapped backs. He didn't look at me once. I wondered how long he had planned this. Days? Weeks? The thought made my stomach twist. I had been loyal. I had stayed late when others left early. I had said yes when I should have said no. Being older in the office meant I worked harder just to be seen as equal. Now I was seen and still erased. When the meeting ended, he packed up slowly, enjoying the moment. I stood when everyone else did, legs stiff. A junior analyst whispered, "I'm so sorry," without meeting my eyes. That was when I knew this wasn't a mistake. This was a decision. And decisions have consequences, even when the applause fades. Security met me at my desk. Not quietly, not kindly. My boss pointed and said, "Please escort her out." Her. Like I was already a story people told in the past tense. Laughter followed us, soft but sharp, like glass underfoot. I packed my plant, my mug with a crack in the handle, and the framed photo of my kids. My hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped everything. The walk to the elevator felt endless. Doors closed. No one spoke. In the lobby, the guard handed me my box and nodded like this happened every day. Outside, the sun was too bright. I reached my car and finally let myself breathe. My phone buzzed. A text from a coworker. He's calling it the Reynolds Plan. My plan. Named after him. I stared at the message until my vision blurred. If you think this ends here, subscribe, because what he took from me was about to cost him everything. I didn't reply. Silence felt safer. I drove home and sat in my car long after the engine cooled. Then I went inside, opened my laptop, and began backing up everything. Every draft. Every email. Every late-night revision he thought I'd forgotten. My fear slowly turned into focus. Buried deep in my folders were timestamps, comments, and version histories that told the truth better than I ever could. I found the contract I signed when I joined the company, the one I barely read because I trusted them. One line stopped me cold. Intellectual property remains with the creator unless assigned. I searched for the assignment form. It didn't exist. My hands stopped shaking. I wasn't panicking anymore. I was planning. At my age, I had learned one thing well: patience. He thought firing me ended the story. It didn't. It cleared the stage. And for the first time since the meeting, I smiled, slow and sharp, knowing this was only the rewind. That night, sleep never came. My phone kept lighting up with messages I didn't answer. Are you okay? I can't believe he did that. One text cut deeper than the rest. He told everyone it was always his idea. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying moments I had ignored. The times he'd asked for small changes, then bigger ones. The way he'd started saying we instead of you. I remembered laughing it off, telling myself I was being paranoid. Older women learn to doubt their instincts first. By dawn, my sadness had hardened into something steadier. I made coffee and opened my email. There it was. Months of proof. Chains where he praised my drafts. Messages where he asked me to hurry because the board was waiting. He hadn't just stolen my work. He had erased me on purpose. That truth hurt, but it also lit something in me. I wasn't powerless. I was prepared. And he had no idea what I was holding. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not my kids. Not my sister. I worked quietly like I always had. I saved files onto a hard drive and labeled folders by date and time. I printed emails and highlighted lines where he called the plan yours. I found calendar invites proving I had led every strategy meeting. Each piece calmed me. This wasn't revenge yet. It was survival. I remembered my first year at the company, how grateful I'd been just to be hired at 42. I had told myself to be easy, flexible, thankful. That mindset had kept me safe once. Now it had cost me everything. By noon, I had a timeline so clear even a stranger could follow it.
My phone buzzed again.
A recruiter message sat unread. I ignored it for now. I wasn't ready to move forward. First, I needed to understand exactly how badly I had been wronged, and how cleanly I could prove it. The hard drive felt heavier than it should have when I held it. Inside were years of my thinking, my problem-solving, my voice. I opened one last folder and froze. A draft he had deleted. My original deck, untouched, saved automatically by the system weeks before his login. The timestamps were perfect. My name was still on the author line. I laughed once, sharp and surprised. This wasn't luck. This was negligence on his part. He had been so sure I wouldn't fight back. I copied the files twice and stored them in different places. Then I pulled out my employment contract again. I read it slowly this time, every line. That clause stood out like it was glowing. Intellectual property remains with the creator unless assigned. I searched my inbox. No assignment. No signature. Nothing. My heart started to pound, not with fear, but with possibility. I wasn't just wronged. I was right. And right, when proven, has a way of changing everything. The lawyer didn't interrupt me once. I sat across from her, hands folded, explaining calmly, like this was someone else's story. When I finished, she leaned back and raised her eyebrows. Then the plan belongs to you, she said simply. The words landed slow and heavy. Belongs to you. She explained what that meant. Ownership. Control. Consequences. My boss had fired me publicly while standing on stolen ground. That mattered. A lot. We talked options. Cease and desist. Formal complaints. Timing. I nodded and took notes, feeling strangely steady. On my way out, my phone buzzed again. This time it was LinkedIn. My former boss had posted. Proud to present my innovative vision today. I screenshot it without hesitation. Every word. Every comment praising him. Proof isn't just documents. It's arrogance. And he was handing me plenty. I walked to my car with my head high. I wasn't rebuilding yet. I was loading the foundation. That evening, I finally opened the recruiter's message. A competitor had seen the presentation. We were impressed, it said. Would you like to talk? I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't reply right away. I wanted to choose my next step carefully. I was tired of reacting. I wanted to act. I thought about my age, how people assume older women should be grateful, quiet, settled. That assumption had protected him. It wouldn't anymore. I typed a short reply.
Yes.
I'm open to a conversation. Nothing more. No details. No emotion. Just interest. I closed my laptop and sat in the quiet. Tomorrow, he would keep calling it his plan. Tomorrow, people would keep applauding. That was fine. I had learned something powerful over the years. Applause fades fast. Paper trails don't. By morning, his post had traction.
Likes.
Shares. Comments calling him visionary. I screenshot everything methodical, calm. Fake praise is still evidence. I noticed how he spoke about his plan in vague terms, avoiding details only I could explain. That mattered. Midday, the recruiter called. Her voice was warm, curious. She asked questions my boss never had. Why did I choose that structure? What risks scared me most? I answered easily. These were my ideas. At the end, she said, "We'd like to move quickly." I thanked her and hung up, heart steady. I wasn't leaving because I was fired. I was choosing. That distinction mattered more than salary. Later, a former coworker messaged, "He's pitching your plan to investors next week." My jaw tightened. That wasn't just theft. That was escalation. I forwarded the message to my lawyer. She replied minutes later.
Good.
Timing helps us. I looked around my quiet living room and realized something had shifted. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was preparing. The interview happened over video. I wore a simple blouse, hair pulled back. No effort to look younger than I was. Experience speaks for itself if you let it. They asked about leadership, failure, pressure. I answered honestly. By the end, they offered double my salary and full creative control. No hesitation. No conditions. I said yes, but quietly. No posts. No announcements. Just a signed agreement and a start date set for after the investor meeting. That part was important. I wanted the truth to land first. After the call, I sat still, letting it sink in. I hadn't just survived. I had leverage. My lawyer called later. "We'll send notice at the right moment," she said. Not too early. Not too late. I trusted her. Trust felt different now. Earned, not assumed. That night, I cooked dinner for my kids and listened to them talk about school. Life kept moving.
So would I.
Just not in the direction he expected. The days before the investor meetings stretched long. I stayed off social media. I let him perform. A friend from accounting called me late one night. "He's nervous," she whispered. "Keeps asking if the files are clean." I thanked her and said nothing more. My lawyer drafted the cease and desist letter with care, attaching proof so clear it left no room to argue. We reviewed it line by line. Each sentence felt like armor. I slept better than I had in weeks. On the morning of the meeting, I woke early and made coffee slowly. I wasn't anxious. I was ready. I thought about the woman I used to be, eager to please, afraid to take up space. That version of me had gotten me here, but she wouldn't take me further. I packed my bag, checked my phone, and waited. At exactly 10 minutes before his presentation, my lawyer hit send. The message went to every investor in attendance. Subject line: Intellectual property, dispute pending. My phone buzzed once. Then again. Calls I didn't answer. Texts I didn't read. I imagined him on stage, clicking forward, confidence cracking. A colleague later told me the projector froze. A notice appeared. Murmurs filled the room. Questions followed. He stalled. He smiled too much. Afterward, executives cornered him. "You told us this was yours," they said. "Explain." I wasn't there, but I could see it clearly. I knew his tells. That afternoon, I started my new job.
Same industry.
Different culture. They welcomed me without ceremony, just respect. My desk was ready. My name on the door. I took a breath and sat down. This wasn't revenge yet. This was positioning. Justice takes patience. And I had learned how to wait. By evening, the headlines began to shift. Reynolds planned under review. Company faces ownership questions. I watched from a distance, calm. He emailed me that night. "Please withdraw the complaint. We can settle privately." I read it once and closed it. No reply yet. I wanted the silence to speak. My lawyer advised filing formal charges the next morning. Credit misrepresentation. Unlawful termination.
Clean. Precise.
I signed without hesitation. At my age, hesitation costs too much. I powered off my phone and sat by the window, city lights blinking on one by one. This wasn't about humiliation anymore. It was about truth catching up. He thought stealing my work would bury me. He was wrong. The real reckoning hadn't even started yet. The courtroom smelled like old paper and polish. I sat straight on the hard bench, hands folded, listening as my former boss took the stand. He smiled, confident, like this was just another meeting he could talk his way through. He said the plan evolved organically. He said I assisted. My jaw tightened, but I stayed still. When my lawyer stood, the room shifted. She projected timelines on the screen. Login records. File histories. My name appeared again and again, dated weeks before his first edit. His smile faltered. I watched it happen slowly, the way truth often arrives. He tried to explain, voice rising, but facts don't bend. The judge leaned forward. I felt something loosen in my chest. For the first time since the betrayal, I wasn't defending myself. I was being seen. Not as emotional. Not as difficult. As the creator. As the owner. As the woman whose work had been stolen and was finally being returned. Emails followed. Hundreds of them. Projected large, impossible to ignore. Messages where he deleted my drafts. Messages where he replaced my name with his. The judge frowned. The room went quiet. My boss shifted in his seat, sweat darkening his collar. I remembered how calm he'd been firing me, how small he'd tried to make me feel. That memory steadied me now. The defense argued confusion, collaboration, mistakes. But the pattern was clear, deliberate, repeated, intentional. When my lawyer rested her case, I exhaled for the first time that day. I looked at my hands and realized they weren't shaking. The judge called a recess. In the hallway, reporters whispered. I didn't speak. I had said everything already. Back inside, the verdict came clean and sharp. The intellectual property and all revenue tied to it belonged to me. The words echoed. Belong to me. Justice isn't loud. It's final. The fallout was immediate. Investors pulled funding within days. The stock dropped hard. Headlines turned unforgiving. Planned ownership fraud. Executive misconduct. I watched from my new office, sunlight spilling across my desk. I felt no joy, just balance returning. Then came the board meeting. I wasn't there, but I knew the outcome before it was announced. He was fired, escorted out by HR, plant and mug in hand. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. Life has a way of correcting itself when given proof. That afternoon, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. The company I'd been fired from wanted to talk. Would you consider returning, they asked, as creative director? I closed my eyes for a moment. The irony sat heavy. I asked for time. Not because I needed it, but because I could take it. Power feels different when it's earned back. I returned a week later. Same lobby. Same security desk. Different energy. Heads turned. Whispers followed. The receptionist smiled and said, "Welcome back." In the meeting room, my former coworkers stood and clapped. Some cried. I didn't. I nodded and thanked them. Applause meant less now. Accountability meant more. I gave my first directive calmly. "We rebuild with honesty," I said. Or not at all. No one argued. His name disappeared from documents. Press releases credited me as the original creator. Awards followed. Innovation of the Year. I accepted without mentioning him. He sent one last email. "You deserve the credit." I got what I earned. I archived it. No reply. Closure doesn't require conversation. It requires clarity. And I had plenty of that now. Months later, I saw him at a conference. He avoided my eyes. I smiled politely and kept walking. My team waited for me inside. I told them, "Protect your ideas. Guard your name." They nodded, understanding. That night, at home, I lit a candle and sat in the quiet. I thought about the day I was fired. How small I felt. How wrong that feeling was. He thought stealing my work would bury me. Instead, it built me higher. When you plant your ideas deep in truth, no one else can harvest the glory. I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished. And that was the real victory. In the weeks that followed, my days settled into a steady rhythm. Morning meetings, quiet lunches, long walks home where I let the air clear my head. The noise around the case faded, but the lessons stayed sharp. People treated me differently now. With care. With respect. Some with guilt. I noticed who reached out and who stayed silent. That mattered. At night, I wrote notes for myself, not about strategy, but about boundaries. About how easily loyalty turns into leverage when you are the only one playing fair. I thought about other women my age, still doubting themselves, still shrinking to fit rooms they built. I wished I could sit them down and tell them what I had learned the hard way. Power doesn't announce itself. It waits for you to claim it. I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I was protecting my future. And that felt stronger than anger ever had. One afternoon, an email slipped through from my former boss. Not legal. Not angry. Just tired. He wrote about regret, about pressure, about fear of falling behind. I read it once, slowly. I felt nothing sharp. No satisfaction. No pity. Just distance. I understood him now, and that understanding sealed the door rather than opening it. I didn't reply. Some conversations only pull you backward. Instead, I focused on my team. I made space for ideas. I credited every contribution loudly and clearly. I watched confidence grow where fear used to live. The company healed faster than anyone expected. Integrity has momentum. When people trust the process, they give more of themselves. That was the real return on investment. At home, my kids noticed the change too. I laughed more. I slept better. I stood taller without thinking about it. Losing everything had stripped me down. Winning it back rebuilt me stronger. The lawsuit wrapped quietly. No drama. No speeches. Just signatures and final transfers. The plan was officially mine, in every sense. Royalties followed. Recognition followed. I donated part of the settlement to a legal fund for wrongfully terminated workers. It felt right. Closure isn't just personal. It's communal. People need to see that speaking up can work. At a conference panel, someone asked how I stayed calm through betrayal. I answered honestly. I wasn't calm. I was careful. Careful with my energy. Careful with my words. Careful not to let anger decide for me. That answer stayed with me. Carefulness had saved me. Not silence. Not patience alone. Intent.
Choice.
At 46, I finally understood that justice doesn't rush. It waits for proof and courage to meet. And when they do, it lands exactly where it should. I ran into a former board member at a charity event. He congratulated me and said, "We should have listened sooner." I smiled politely. That was as close to an apology as I would get. I didn't need more. I had rebuilt my name in a way no meeting ever could. Walking home that night, heels in hand, I felt light. The city hummed around me, indifferent and alive. Life hadn't paused for my pain, and I was grateful now that it hadn't. Pain passes. Growth stays. I unlocked my door, set my bag down, and looked around my apartment. It felt earned. Every quiet corner, every decision. I wasn't defined by what was taken from me anymore. I was defined by what I refused to let stay buried. Tomorrow would bring new problems, new risks. That was fine. I trusted myself now. And trust, once rebuilt, is unbreakable. The real revenge wasn't the verdict or the headlines. It began here in the calm after. In knowing I could sit with myself without doubt. In watching him fade from relevance while I expanded. People asked if I felt vindicated. I said no. Vindication depends on other people seeing your worth. I didn't need that anymore. I had seen it myself. That was enough. I thought back to the meeting where he fired me, the laughter, the walk of shame. Those memories no longer burned. They informed. They taught me what I would never tolerate again. Revenge stories often end with spectacle. Mine didn't. It ended with ownership. Of my work. Of my voice. Of my future. And that kind of ending lasts. The court returned after lunch, quieter than before. My former boss sat straighter now, hands clenched, confidence leaking out of him in small, visible ways. My lawyer stood and introduced a final set of evidence. Internal emails he thought were gone. Backup server records he didn't know existed. The screen filled with proof that he hadn't just taken credit, he had erased me on purpose. Lines where he wrote, "Remove her name." Lines where he said, "I'll present this as mine." I watched his face change as his own words appeared larger than life. The judge leaned back, arms crossed, eyes sharp. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't teamwork gone wrong. It was theft with intent. I felt something settle in my chest, heavy but right. For years, I had explained myself carefully, worried about being seen as emotional or difficult. Now I didn't need to say a word. The truth spoke clearly, and it spoke for me. The verdict came faster than I expected. The judge ruled that the intellectual property was legally mine, including all past and future revenue tied to it. My boss's shoulders dropped like a marionette with cut strings. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just closed my eyes for one breath and let it land.
Mine.
The courtroom buzzed, but it felt distant. My lawyer squeezed my arm once, proud but composed. Outside, reporters waited. I gave one short statement. This was about honesty and ownership. That was all. No drama. No victory speech. On the drive home, I pulled over and sat quietly, hands on the wheel. I thought about every night I doubted myself, every time I stayed silent to keep the peace. That silence had ended here. Justice didn't feel explosive. It felt steady, like something finally clicking into place after being misaligned for years. The company unraveled quickly after that. Investors didn't like uncertainty, and they hated dishonesty. Funding disappeared. Projects froze. The stock dropped hard and fast. I watched the numbers without pleasure. Consequences aren't entertainment. They're correction. Within days, the board called an emergency meeting. He wasn't prepared this time. No speeches. No charm. Just questions he couldn't answer. By the end of the day, HR escorted him out. Someone sent me a photo, him holding a cardboard box with his plant and mug. The same image I carried out months earlier. I deleted it without saving. I didn't need proof of symmetry. Life had balanced the scale. That evening, my phone rang again. This time, it was the company itself. "Would you consider returning?" they asked, "in a leadership role?" I looked out the window, city lights flickering on. I didn't answer right away. Power tastes better when you don't rush to swallow it. I agreed to meet them on my terms. The boardroom felt smaller than I remembered. The same table where my work had been stolen now held people who wouldn't meet my eyes. They apologized carefully, legally. I listened. Then I spoke. I laid out my conditions clearly. Transparency. Credit. Authority. A clean slate culture-wide. They nodded, fast and eager. They needed me now. That mattered. When they offered the title creative director, I accepted. Not because I needed redemption, but because I could shape something better. Walking out, I felt light. Not triumphant.
Resolved.
Word spread quickly. Coworkers messaged me with congratulations and quiet confessions. I should have spoken up. I didn't blame them. Fear is powerful, but so is example. And mine was finally visible. Revenge wasn't loud. It was structural. It changed who held power and how it would be used. My first day back, I walked through the lobby slowly. Heads turned. The receptionist smiled wide and said, "Welcome back." In the conference room, my team stood and applauded. Some looked relieved. Some looked ashamed. I let the moment pass without feeding it. Applause fades. Systems stay. When the room quieted, I spoke simply. "We rebuild with honesty," I said. No more shortcuts. No more erasing. No one argued. His name was already gone from documents, replaced with mine where it had always belonged. Later that day, The press release went live. Original creator reclaims ownership. I didn't read the comments. I went home, made tea, and sat in silence. The revenge was complete, not because he fell, but because I stood where I should have all along. The weeks that followed were heavy with work, but clean. I reviewed systems, not people, first. Credit policies, approval trails, authorship tracking. I wanted theft to be impossible, not just punishable. My age helped here. I had seen enough cycles to know where rot begins. In meetings, I noticed how people watched me, waiting for sharpness, for bitterness. I gave them clarity instead. I praised openly. I corrected privately. Slowly, shoulders dropped. Ideas flowed again. One afternoon, HR brought me a final document. A formal apology letter from him, required by the settlement. I read it once. "You deserve the credit," it said. I got what I earned. I signed receipt and filed it away. No response. Closure doesn't require forgiveness. It requires boundaries. That night, I walked home instead of taking a cab. The city felt different now. Not kinder. Just honest. And I trusted myself inside it. The press moved on, as it always does. New scandals. New villains. My name stayed, quiet but solid, attached to work that spoke for itself. At an industry event, a young woman approached me. She said she'd followed my case closely. "It made me save my drafts," she said, half joking, half serious. I smiled. "Good," I told her. "Protect your name." On stage later, I accepted an award for innovation. I didn't mention him. I talked about teams, about clarity, about how ideas grow best when they're not stolen. Applause came, but it didn't rush me this time. I understood how temporary it was. What mattered was what came after. The emails from employees saying they felt safer. The quiet confidence in meetings. Success measured in sustainability, not noise. At 46, I didn't need to prove I was impressive. I needed to prove I was fair. That legacy would last longer. Months later, I ran into him at a conference. The hallway was crowded. He looked thinner, older somehow. When our eyes met, he looked away first. I didn't chase the moment. I smiled politely and kept walking. Inside the main room, my team waited, laptops open, ready. I opened the meeting with a reminder. "Protect your ideas," I said. "No one else will guard your name for you." Heads nodded. They understood the cost now. That evening, I went home and lit a candle. The quiet felt earned. I thought back to the day I was fired, carrying my plant past laughing coworkers. That woman had survived something she didn't yet understand. I wished I could reach back and tell her it wouldn't end there. That loss wasn't the end of her story. It was the correction point. The place where truth finally took control. Life didn't become perfect. It became honest. Problems still came. Pressure still existed. But I no longer carried the weight of being unseen. My kids noticed the change most. "You laugh different now," my daughter said one night. She was right. Lighter. Freer. I slept through the night. I stopped replaying conversations. I trusted my instincts again. Sometimes I thought about him. Not with anger, but distance. He had taught me something painful and permanent. That approval given too freely becomes a weapon. That silence protects the wrong people. I used that lesson daily. In every meeting. In every hire. Power doesn't have to humiliate to be effective. It just has to be clear. I wasn't anyone's afterthought anymore. I wasn't a footnote erased from slides. I was the author. And I finally lived like it. He thought stealing my work would bury me. Instead, it built me higher. Not because I fought louder, but because I stood firmer. When you plant your ideas deep in truth, no one else can harvest the glory. I sat on my couch one quiet night, book open, city breathing outside the window. The silence didn't feel heavy. It felt like home. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't proving anything. I had taken back more than a company. I had taken back my name. And this time I protected it. By the end of the year, the numbers spoke for themselves. Profits doubled, not because the plan changed, but because the culture did. People stopped hiding ideas. They stopped guarding credit like a secret. Meetings felt different, lighter, sharper. I watched managers learn how to lead without stealing. I watched junior staff grow brave enough to speak. At 46, I wasn't chasing titles anymore. I was building something that could survive me. An industry journal named me Innovator of the Year. When I stood on stage, the lights warm on my face, I felt calm. I talked about teamwork, about integrity, about how ideas thrive where people feel safe. I didn't mention betrayal. I didn't mention revenge. That chapter had already closed. Afterward, I went home alone, kicked off my shoes, and laughed softly in the quiet. Success didn't roar. It settled in gently, like something that finally fit. Time did what it always does. It softened the edges. The story became less about him and more about what happened after. That was how I knew I'd won. At a conference months later, someone introduced me simply by my work, not my past. I liked that. I ran into him once more, briefly, near a coffee stand. He nodded without meeting my eyes. I nodded back. No anger. No satisfaction. Just distance. That moment told me everything. Revenge had finished its work. Closure isn't dramatic. It's quiet acceptance. I walked into my next session with my head high, knowing I didn't carry that weight anymore. I had outgrown it. Power no longer scared me. Neither did loss. I trusted myself now, and that trust was stronger than any apology he never quite knew how to give. Back at the office, I gathered my team for a workshop. Not about strategy, but ownership. Document everything, I told them. Speak up early. Protect your work. They listened because they knew the cost of not doing so. Afterward, a young analyst stayed behind. She said, "Seeing what you did made me stop doubting myself." That mattered more than awards. At home that night, I cooked dinner, watered my plants, and sat with a book. The quiet wrapped around me, steady and kind. I thought about how easily life can tip, how fast everything can be taken, and how much strength it takes to take it back the right way. I wasn't bitter. I was grounded. That difference changed everything. Looking back, I understood something clearly. The betrayal hadn't destroyed me.
It had clarified me.
It showed me where I had been silent too long and why. It showed me the cost of shrinking. I carried that lesson into every part of my life. Work.
Family.
Friendship. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. I stopped explaining my worth. When problems came, I faced them directly, without fear of being labeled difficult. Difficulty, I learned, is often just honesty refusing to be quiet. That realization was the real inheritance of everything I went through. I wasn't grateful for the pain, but I honored what it taught me. He thought stealing my work would bury me. Instead, it built me higher. Not because I chased revenge, but because I chose truth and followed it all the way through. I took back the company, yes, but more than that, I took back myself. I ended where I should have always been, standing firm, unafraid, and fully seen. When you plant your ideas deep in truth, no one else can harvest the glory. And when you finally believe that, no one can take it from you again. If this story stayed with you, like the video, subscribe for more powerful revenge stories, and tell me in the comments what part hit you the hardest.